Talk about forever, but we've only got today. And the days go by, I can feel them flying like a hand out the window as the cars go by. It's all we've been given, so you better start living. You better start living. Better start living right now. 'Cause days go by. Don't you wanna dive on in? Yeah, the water feels right. Dancing on the edge of love, you're a beautiful sight. So why you still standing there in the half moonlight? Come on, baby, give me a little more you. Come on, baby, give me a little more you. You're batting those baby blues, and honey, I swear, the way you got me needing you, girl, it just ain't fair. You've given me a little bit, yeah, but don't stop there. Come on, baby, give me a little more you. Come on, baby, give me a little more you. I'm here falling for you, my heart's calling for you. I know I never can get enough.
Yeah. Yep. Check, check. Okay. Good morning. Yeah, it's Thursday. You made it this far. Are you proud of yourselves? Are you tired? Have you forgotten everything that you learned in the Tuesday class?
Yes, but I wrote it down.
He wrote it down. I wrote all mine down too. I can't remember half of what I'm doing anyway. Okay, my name is David Butts. I am the training manager and senior technical engineer for Advanced Solutions out of Cary, North Carolina. Who's from North Carolina? Raise your hand. Let's hear from the Carolina folks. Who's from the East Coast? A few folks from the East Coast. How about the West Coast? Okay, y'all are close enough. You can go home now. Midwest? Y'all are really stuck in the middle of everything, aren't you? Too far away from the beach. Where I love to go, man. That's one of my favorite stuff to do. We're going to be looking at Revit MEP today and talking about some of the things that can help make your life a little bit easier. And the fun part about this is that I started on Revit MEP when it was Revit Systems and it first came out. And we got the package, and for the first couple of releases, we're like, no, we're not going to sell it. Can't sell it. It doesn't have what people need to get a job done. And so they got Revit MEP 2008, and a little side story of this. We became a Revit reseller when we were Cadre Systems. We were purchased by Advanced Solutions about a year ago. And Kristen Bloom in my office, she and I both went to Waltham and became a Revit reseller before Autodesk bought them. So we went up and we drank the Kool-Aid because this was really cool stuff. The fact that you can have parametrically build a building, and it's kind of created the same way that a piece of equipment is. And so the guys that left one of the competitors to actually develop this product actually were trying to approach the design of a building the same way that you would actually go through and design a piece of equipment. So it was really cool how they did it. Parametric technology is really the way to go. So we got to the 2008 release. It's pretty good. We had some decent stuff in there. Had a lot of nice little things to use, but we still had a lot of holes and things weren't quite finished. How many people have tried to use piping in Revit MEP? How do you like it? Yeah, a couple people like it. A few people are like, oh, help me. Especially about 2 days before that project deadline, right? Everybody knows the 4 stages of a project, correct? Does everybody know what the 4 stages of a project are? What's the first stage? Schematic design, right? What's the second stage? DD. What's the third stage? CDs. What's the fourth stage? The panic stage. It usually occurs 2 days before the end of any one of those other stages. So we found ourselves constantly being reactive in how we did our design. And so it gets kind of interesting. And so as we start to work with parametrics, what we're doing is we're really building the building sooner in the process. And so we're making decisions sooner in the process. So what you're going to see is a change in how projects get done. And that's kind of where Revit MEP is starting to mature. 2009 had a lot of improvements. In the last few days, they've released the 3rd service pack. Is that right? Just came out a couple of days ago. Hadn't had a chance to download mine yet. But I also know if you're a subscription member, there is a new pipe fitting library that you can get off of the web that has gray iron in it and a couple other things. And Bernie Duncan's in the back of the room. Everybody say hi, Bernie. Bernie is one of my guys that I learned from. So we can all say hi to Bernie. If you don't like the class, then my name is Bernie Duncan today. So there's a lot of stuff that you can also find out from Bernie if he's in the back of the room. You want to talk to him about what's coming out with Revit and that kind of stuff, just talk to Bernie. He's a good guy. He'll help you out with that. Okay, so there's a couple of things that we need to talk about for the class before we get started here. Some general reminders. If you have a ringing mobile phone, it'll be answered by the user to your left. Those of you who don't have anybody on your left, I get to answer it. And we all know what happens when I answer the phone. Usually the wife or husband gets very upset and the boss is saying you're looking for a new job. Class participation is required. We're going to ask questions. I want to see your opinion about things, see how you might do something differently, because this is a tips and tricks class. I may show you something about making conduit out of pipe, but you might have a different way of doing it. You might want to try to use duct. I had somebody tell me that's what they were doing yesterday. So that's kind of things that we're going to look at today in the class here. So feel free to pitch up and ask questions and say whatever you want. Tip providers win prizes. I have a shiny laptop in my bag over here that I'm going to give away today. You laugh. I do. The latest in technology. Yes, it works. And I guarantee you it will never crash. Okay, the course number when you go do your evaluations is ME304. How does everybody like the new evaluation system? No? That means you have to go to the place where the beer is. I'll give you a tip. Fill out the evaluation before you get the beer. So you remember which class it was. What did he do in that class? Okay, so you'll do your evaluations. Please remember to go do that today before 8 o'clock, because if you do a registration on the day of the class, you are eligible to win a free trip to AU next year, which is going to be at Mandalay Bay. So we're moving up the road, bigger facilities. Okay? Everybody pretty cool with that? All right. So let's go ahead and jump on ahead here. So we're going to hit 5 main areas, and I've kind of sorted this out into 30 of my favorite tips. We'll try to hit every one of them. If we don't get to all of them today, they're all in your book, all in your handout. Everything's described in great detail, a little bit longer than some of my normal handouts, so you got a lot of stuff in here today. We're going to talk about the templates first, all right, because that's where you start. The second thing we're going to talk about are systems that are defined within the template, what it is that I need to be doing. We're also going to spend a little bit of time talking about some things you can do to your families to make life a little bit easier. We're going to talk about routing tips, the easiest way to make routing layouts and automatic layouts, and some things that can help you with those tools. And then we're going to talk a little bit about sharing. What are some things that you need to do when you're working with your architect and actually giving them information back? How many people in here are architects? Stand up. Come on, stand up. All right. Since you're the architect, you get to be the sheriff. You're Woody. Hey, they're the sheriff anyway, right? They get to tell you everything you're supposed to do. Okay. All right, so tip section number 1. Everybody ready? Templates. What goes in a template? Anybody? What do we put in our template? Well, we have object styles, right? If you're going to use this program, you've got to have style. If you don't have style, you can't use this program. And styles control how things look by default in the view. Okay? And this was one of the first comments that we got back from people is that I look at my drawings and they look like garbage. They don't look good. Anybody ever heard that compliment? Not a compliment, is it really? It's like, no, these things look terrible. Well, you have control over that. You have the ability to adjust those styles and line weights. So let me do this. I'm going to switch over here to my Revit so you can see what's going on. And I'm going to go ahead and start a new template here from a template that I have defined in here. So I'm going to start with one called Systems Default. Why would I use Systems Default here? Why do I want to use that as my primary template? What does it have? You said this yesterday, remember? Somebody said it in here yesterday. It's got mechanical, it's got electrical, it's got plumbing, it's got piping. Who answered? There you go. You get one. Who else? Well, if you weren't reading, I told you, pay attention. Hey, I haven't thrown this yet. Okay. So what first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and I'm going to go Settings and I'm going to go to Object Styles. Now, because I'm an expert Revit user, I can look at this and I can tell you that air terminals are going to be pen weight number 4. They're going to be black and solid. So I know exactly how that's going to print. Right? All right. Everybody who has a dumb stare, put it on right now. What in the world does 4 mean? Anybody know what 4 is set to? 0.018. Close. You're cheating. She's reading the book. There's another novel concept. CAD users reading the manual. Yeah. Okay, well, that's really kind of cryptic. It doesn't really tell you what the pen weight is. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cancel out of this dialog. I'm going to go to Settings, and I'm going to go to Line Weights. Now I'm going to look at it. What do I know about pen number 4 for my modeling object line weights? What do I know about it? Take a look. What's the screen tell me? This, by the way, this is measuring in inches. At 8th scale, what's the pen weight going to be? How many people think that's a little bit on the heavy side? Me? That was too heavy for me. I didn't like it because it actually made my diffusers heavier than I wanted them to be. So it's a real simple task. I just simply come into the chart and I change it to what I want it to be. It's just simple text. There's nothing complicated about this at all. Okay? And I can make that adjustment. And I can also, if I wanted to pick several cells at once, I can actually drag across cells. Let me see if I can do this right. I always screw this up, and Bernie's going to fuss at me here in just a minute. But I can drag across cells and actually change multiple ones at once, and my mouse is not big enough the way I want, so I'll go back and show that later. So that's called a user error, ID10T, right here. So you can edit several of these cells at once. It'll put them in a cycle, and you can just scroll right through and make the changes. Now, how many people are actually using pen weights all the way up to a ½ an inch wide? Pretty heavy, isn't it? In fact, most of the pen weights only go up to pen number 5. So you can go through and edit this file. I mean, if you want to have a larger variety of pen weights, does anybody in here have KIP printers? Anything like that? They get pretty detailed, don't they? Newer OSAs. What's some of the newer ones that are out there? Isn't it? Yeah, the TDS 500? Okay, TCS 500. Yeah, there's some in there that you can really get some really good looking prints. So the first thing you do when you get your template is to go in here and manipulate this file and set it up the way that you want it to be set up. Okay? So now if I make that change, once I make my line weight setting here, the next step is to go to my object styles and edit it here. So if I didn't really want those air terminals to be pen weight number 4, I can just come over here and say pen weight number 3. Now, this is a global setting. What happens when I actually get to a view of the model? Now, everybody knows that the default pen weight right now is a 3 or a 4 or whatever we have it assigned to. What's going to happen when I go into an electrical view? What's going to happen to that air terminal? First of all, it's not going to be visible. Why? Because usually in electrical views, it's turned off. So after I get my line weights defined and I've looked at my object styles, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into view templates. And I'm going to take a look at the different view templates that are in the drawing in here. Now I'm going to start off by looking just at plan views. And I have a mechanical plan views. Everybody see that? So I got mechanical plan in here. If I wanted to change how things look, what part of this screen do I need to change? Visual Graphics Overrides Model, where it says Edit. One of the nice things about 2009 is I can check this box over here and say whether I want the view template that I've defined here to include this setting. There's something different from the default. So this is like an override checkbox right here. So I go into Visibility Graphics and I see my air terminals and I can override this to be any pen weight that I want, any one of those numbers. I can also adjust color, line patterns, all that stuff based on that view. So it's line weights first, object style second, view templates third. How many people have actually set their view templates up? Good. The rest of you, get out. Now, I actually had a client that went through and used this thing right out of the box, and they got to 75% of the project, and they exported everything to AutoCAD because they couldn't figure out how to adjust the pen weights. So they lost all that work. And then I get a call after they've done that. So what did I do? You had a free support contract. Okay, so visibility graphics is really nice. And let's see the layer for air terminals. We have the layer for, wait a minute. It's the other good thing about Revit, no layers. Yay! I don't have to deal with layers. I'm looking at the visibility of an object. Whether or not it's on or off is what's controlled in here. Now, I want to create a fire protection view. I don't have one in my template because I'm going to do sprinkler plans in here. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cancel out of this dialog box. And what I'm going to do is I can actually just go down here and say duplicate one of these styles here. So I'm going to come to the bottom and I'm going to duplicate the mechanical plan. And I'm going to call it the fire protection plan. All right, everybody got that? Now, once I do that, I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to make some simple changes. I'm going to leave the air terminals turned on. Why? I know where they are, but how do I want them to print? Really fine. In fact, I even want to halftone them. So what I can do is I can come over here and say, hey, halftone this thing. And by the way, don't show me a lot of detail. Give me a coarse view. Because these different detail levels are going to control how much detail I have in that particular object. So if I just want to see a simple shape in there with things like pumps and other stuff that I don't want to see in the fire protection plan, I can go ahead and assign this to only show up a certain way, like only show me the same block that shows up in the coarse view. How long does it take to do this? Seconds. No time at all. So I'm going to have my air terminals turned on. I'm going to turn a few other things off. Just going to get over here and drive for a minute. Let's see. I want to turn off the zones. I don't need to see that. I don't need to see the ducts or fittings or accessories, detail items. I do want to see lighting fixtures because, again, that's something that I have to worry about running into. But I also want to come over here for light fixtures, and I want to say make those halftone as well, too. And I can come in here and assign it to a line weight that's skinny so it's really light in the background. So it's there for visual purposes, but at any point I can always come back into the view and turn it off when I'm ready to print. Pretty simple? So it's just the same things that you would do with layer control. You're just doing it within a dialog box for visibility graphics. Okay? And I can turn off things. Well, I need my pipe on because I'm doing a fire protection plan. And I can come down here and make sure that I got sprinklers turned on, all that good stuff. So it's pretty simple, right? Now there's one other thing I want to do with this model too. I'm going to go ahead and select OK to get out of this. I'm also going to look at the view range. Now this is one of the things that if you start off with the default view that comes with Revit MEP in the template, a little trick question in here. How tall, or what's the view range of the 1 meg view in the default template? Anybody know that answer? You look like you're ready to say it. Come on. No, that's the ceiling height cut plane. How tall is the 1 meg view in the system default template? Oh, y'all are guessing. Who said 10? There he goes, 10 feet. Everybody give him a hand. He's actually looked at the template. Okay, so in this case, do I really want to do that? I mean, we're talking about a sprinkler plan. What do I really want to show? And typical floor plans, what are we showing? If I'm doing a first floor plan and a second floor plan, what am I showing? Sprinkler plan, what do I show? All the sprinkler stuff from the first floor up to the second floor. So I want my view range to go all the way to the level above with no offset. That way I see everything from the first to the second floor. Got that? So it's another thing that the template can control is the range of what I see. So instead of just giving it a fixed height, I want to tell it, hey, let's go ahead and say, let's look at the next floor. And again, once I get in my project, I can override this. I can change it to say whatever I want it to say. Okay, so that's one of the things, a couple of things that you can use to actually control a view template. But I really need to go into more detail. I need to look at more ways to control how things look. Another trick question here. What are the default piping systems and water-based systems that are in the program right now? Just name a few of them. Who said hydronic? Hydronic. What else do they have? Sanitary. All right, we got a little range going on. Look, he's already ducking. Sanitary. What else? You got domestic cold water, domestic hot water, and 4 different fire protection views. Oh, my. How many different systems do you really have? I could have hundreds of them. I mean, but the program is looking at a system as a way to help me size pipe. Okay, so it's not looking at it in the traditional sense in AutoCAD where we have everything broken down into layers, right? And what do? We show everything different colors, different line weights. We got some people that show domestic cold water with a dashed dot line. We get some people that show it with a solid line with text in it. Particular line type. Who does that? Anybody? Okay, you can't have line types with text in it anymore. You got to use the labels. Okay, but you can do tag all not tagged. Anybody figured that out? God, I love that command. All right, so I want to define a filter in here. So I'm going to start off by creating a filter underneath the settings dialog box. And a filter is something that appends and adds to the systems in here to give me more visibility control. So I've got a sanitary one in here, but how many different types of sanitary am I going to have? I'm going to have sanitary waste, sanitary vent. Who's green in here? Green shirt, stand up. Green lace, stand up. Come on, show me who's green. Come on. All these green people, nobody's volunteering today. They're like, it's early. All right, we have sanitary black water and sanitary gray water. Why would I differentiate those two waste systems? I'm going to reuse sanitary gray water. We have a great big project going over at NC State on the Centennial campus where they're trying to get certain LEED credits, and they're trying to reuse as much water as possible. So they're using storm water runoff from roof drains. They're using sink runoff and running it through a filtration system on site that's all outside, and they're using that for their irrigation. It's a really neat little project. If you go to the website, ncsu.edu, and you look up sustainability, they have a great article about how they're doing that. So in this particular case, what I want to do is I want to create a couple of filters in here so I can segregate my pipe into those two different systems. So I can either right-click on this and duplicate sanitary. I have a new one down here, and by duplicating it, it's going to already have the items checked. So it just saves me a step in the process. Then I'm going to right-click on it, and I'm going to rename it. And I'm going to call this first one sanitary gray water. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to tell it how I want it to filter. And what I'm looking for is a type mark that's defined within a piping system that's set up for sanitary gray water. Once I do that, I'm going to say that the type mark is going to be equals to SGW. So this is the label that I actually put on the pipe. That way I know it's sanitary gray water pipe. So I've got that set first, and now I can go down and apply that. So that one's in the system. And now I can right-click on this, duplicate it again, rename it, and I can call this one sanitary black water. Oh, black water, keep on rolling. All right, who sang that song? Yeah, where is he? You get the red light. Whoop, sorry. I need to learn how to aim. She's like, I didn't do it. Okay, so I'm going to come over here, and the only thing I'm really going to change is what the abbreviation is. I want that to just be SBW instead of SGW. Does everybody see that? So now that I've got the filter done and I've got them defined, what I can do is go back to my view templates. So I'm going to go to Settings, View Templates, go back and tell me to show me floor plans, pick on the plumbing plan. Now I can come in and I can add filters. So I go into the filters and I see sanitary in here, and I really don't want to use this because I don't have just one type of sanitary pipe. So I'm going to remove it. I don't want to have it in there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a couple. So I'm going to add my sanitary gray water, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say that I want it to be whatever weight for and whatever color. I'm going to make it gray. That way I know it's sanitary gray water. Oh. I can add things like dash dot, line weights, all kinds of stuff. I'm going to leave it alone for right now. But this gives me that ability to control that. So I go ahead and I select OK. Add the same thing for sanitary black water. Notice that my filter list is actually starting to drop down. So as I take things in that apply to pipe, which is part of this visibility graphics, I can actually go through and check these things off as I get them in my template. So now I've got sanitary black water added. And I can do the same thing with that. I can come over here, change the weight to 4, and change the color. You guessed it. What color? Red. Thank you very much. You said red. I don't want to go to your house. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So now whenever I draw a pipe that has that type of type mark in it, it actually says SGW or SBW in the type mark for the pipe style, then it will automatically make that pipe in that view that color. Does everybody follow me so far? What are we doing? We're doing the same thing as layers, colors, and line types, right? But where am I defining this information? Where am I setting it up? In the template. Yeah? Okay, the question is, for underslab piping, do we need to create another one? Absolutely. You can make another one that says underslab piping. Now, in my case, all of this might be underslab, so I might not have to worry about it. But if I wanted to differentiate the two, I could. It's just simply create another filter. Yes, sir, in the corner. Okay, the question is that you've already created this in your template, but when you put the pipe down,
when you draw the pipe in,
it
only puts one tag.
When you put the pipe in, it only puts one tag in there. Okay, I'm going to show you how to fix that right now.
Okay.
I'm going to show you how to do that with a pipe type. Did that answer that question? Because this is really going to be the next step that you have to do is I've got to say, all right, I'm drawing a pipe. I've got to tell it which system to use. I have to know what filter to use. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to click OK and click OK to get out of the dialog. Everybody say OK. Thank you very much. Well, that shows at 3 and 11. I'm going to come down here to families, and I'm going to come down to pipes and go to pipe types. Now, what do I have as a default in my template? PVC and standard, which standard is supposed to be used for everything that's not PVC. Everything. Does that help? No. I've got all different kinds of stuff that I'm working in here, and that really doesn't cover everything that I need to have. So a real simple way to take care of the label is just to duplicate one of these and to create a new pipe type. By the way, this is a system family. We're kind of moving into the next part here. What's the difference between a system family and a regular component family? What's the difference between the two? Well, that's sort of right. You can edit a system family. I can only have different types. A great question, a great answer there. I can only have different types. Where do they live? Where do my system families live? In the template, as part of the project. That's where they live. Now, they can vary from project to project, but where am I going to define my system types in my template? So here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to right-click on PVC, and I'm going to pick Duplicate. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on this, and I'm going to rename it. And I'm going to call this Plastic. As soon as I learn how to type. Sanitary. As soon as I learn how to type again. Gray water. All right? Now, once I have that done, it's in the list. And again, I can right-click on it and go to Properties. Now that I have that redefined, there's one simple way to take care of this. Type mark, SGW. That's all I have to do to differentiate this. And I can have a label. I can define a label family that when it's looking at the pipe type, it's looking at the type mark value rather than a generic label, and it will get the correct information for you. So I have to have the conjunction of the filters. I have to have the conjunction of a custom pipe type that reflects what it is that I want to annotate. You understand? So this is how you really start to break these things up to allow for different annotations. My template that I have, I've got probably 40 different pipe types in it already. And I'm including a combination of the material that's used and the use of that particular system. So that way I don't have to go through all this legwork and redefine it. And I got a little bonus for you guys. My template is going to be available on the AU website after AU. It's free for everybody. It's 24 meg. If you have a problem downloading it, let me know. We'll put it up on our FTP site so you guys can download it from there. When you go to AU, or to the website for AU, and you look up my profile, my classes will be there, and underneath there, there'll be a downloading data sets, and it'll be underneath that folder. Okay? All right, so that's a simple way that I can break out pipe, but there's other things that I can do in here too. If you take a look, I've got just basic fittings in here, right? What else do I need to have for this system family in order to really make it work right? How many fittings do I have right now? Not a whole lot. That doesn't tell me a whole lot. That's just a PVC standard bend. Was it a quarter bend, an eighth bend? Is it, you know, what is it? Short radius, long radius? What kind of bend is it? What kind of elbow am I actually using? I want to show you one of my favorite tricks. I'm going to come over here and click OK for the time being, and I'm going to get out of this dialog. All right? And now what I'm going to do is right-click on my Start button and pick Explore. And I'm going to go to a folder where I have all of my fittings. Now, I'm going to have a brain hiccup here for just a second. I've got to remember where I put all this stuff. C program files. It's one of these great locations. It's either under one or two locations. It's either here. Oh, it's not there. It's under Docs and Settings. Yeah, Docs and Settings. Okay, we're going to go to Application Data. We're going to go down here to Revit MEP. Oh, we got to go to Autodesk first. Autodesk, okay. We're going to go to Revit MEP 2009. We have Imperial Library. I have my custom library up here, any parts that I have. I go underneath Pipe, and I go to Fittings. Now, one of the differences here is that fittings are component families, but they're parametric component families. All right? So I don't necessarily have to have those in my template. They can be outside of my template. So I don't necessarily have to load every fitting possible into the template, do I? Oh, what kind of work do you guys do? Let's pick on a couple of people real quick. What kind of projects do you work on? Schools and casinos. Oh, casinos, I want to come work for you guys, man. That's what I want to be doing. I get in this place and I'm like, oh, Okay. What kind of work do you do? Electrical hospitals. What type of piping systems do you have in hospitals?
Or electrical. Cable tray.
Listen, there's always one guy. Cable tray and conduit. All right, I know they're not in there yet. Medical gases. What else do you have? What kind of medical gases are you going to have?
Oxygen, nitrogen.
Oxygen, nitrogen, medical air.
Vacuum.
A lot of stuff. What kind of fittings do you use on that pipe? What type of pipe do you use with that stuff? Stainless? You're expensive, man. We could go with somebody a little bit less expensive to do a job than you. Copper? Bunch of copper? Okay, well, let's say I wanted to bring in some different fittings in here. This is a really neat little trick in here. I'm going to come over here and go to elbows. And I'm going to take a look at the different elbows that could possibly use for PVC in here. I'm going to pick DWV, waste, my closet bin, glued. I'm going to just grab a bunch of these right here. Three-way L's. I haven't really figured out why that one's in there yet. But if I want to get these and put them in my template, this is very difficult. Stay with me. Watch this. Everybody pay attention. If you're reading your book, look up. Watch. Stay with me. Here we go. You ready? Drag, drop. I just put all of the pipe fittings that I needed to address that type in my template by simply dragging and dropping it out of Windows Explorers into my template. How easy is that? How many people have done that before? Tried drag and dropping into Revit? It's a pretty slick little trick. So I got a little carried away when I was making my template. I'm dragging and dropping everything in there. Wow, this is really cool. Watch. I showed it to my wife and she goes, shut up. Okay. So now I've got those in the template. So now what I can do is I can come back over here to my pipe type and it's saying, hey, what do you want to do? Do you want to open these and actually edit them? Or do you want to just simply load them into the current project? I'm going to pick OK. And I'm going to say, hey, there's a couple of them in here. Do you want to override them? Now I'm going to give you a tip in here. If I ever customize a family, like I made some changes to some of the fittings in here, what controls how the family is defined, how those shapes are set up? What is the item that actually controls that? Who said parameter? You just get a high five, whoever said it. I'm running out of candy. Parameters. They're kind of like the attributes and the property set definitions of the AutoCAD world. Well, if I've made changes, and I'll give you another piece of advice too. If my template was started in an earlier release, and I've got a new release, and what I want to do is update my families to make sure that if Autodesk has changed any of these parameters, I want to get the current version, I simply do this. I drag and drop, and I overwrite the parameters of existing types. In fact, I strongly recommend this if you're trying to carry a template forward from release to release. Go in, find the fittings you want, get in the library, drag and drop them in, because they may have fixed something in those families. So all I have to do with this is just say yes to all. Now they're in my project. Now they're in my project. Now they're in my project. Okay, now they're in my project. Now I'm going to come over here and I can pick from all these different types of PVC bins. So I can just have a closet bin. I can have a DWV glued bin. I can pick from any other type that I want, but I have that flexibility. And again, I strongly recommend if you're on subscription, go get that new fittings library. I've been talking to a couple of my buddies up at Autodesk and be watching the next release. We're probably going to update how those libraries are structured to make them a little bit simpler. Pretty cool? Everybody understand the value of the template and what needs to go into it and how it's actually going to help me with that information. Now, there's always a real good one that somebody brought up a minute ago. There's always got to be one guy, and it's usually the electrical guy. What is it that Revit doesn't have? Come on. Conduit, have the light. Who said cable tray? It's the shirt, man. I'm drawn to the pink shirt. Okay. Okay. We don't have conduit. We don't have cable tray. We have oval duct. What's really funny is if you look up the duct sizes XML file that has all the sizes for the ducts, they actually have all the oval sizes in there. They just don't have a tool to create the oval duct. They're working on it. Okay. You got to be patient. How old is Revit MEP? 4 years. Who's got kids? How many's got a 4-year-old? Okay, 4-year-old. I want you to do a parametric pipe fitting for me. Yes, Daddy. I draw it on the wall with my crayons. No. Okay, so I got to cheat here a little bit. I need to create my own pipe type in here, and I'm going to use it to make Conduit. So I'm going to cheat here a little bit. I'm going to right-click on Standard and duplicate this. I'm going to rename it. Call it Conduit. Another spelling error. Conduit. I'm really simple, right? So now I have a Conduit type in here. So now if I want to change it, what do I do? If you hear me snap my fingers, everybody in the room should be yelling right-click. Okay? Who was in the classes yesterday? You guys are in deep trouble, man. You forgot it already. I was at the beer bash last night. Okay, so if I want to change something, what do I do? Right-click. Good. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to come in here and right-click on this, and I can duplicate it, edit it, match properties from another one, create an instance, go to Properties. I can also do this by double-clicking. I can make it Conduit material, copper, ductile iron, stainless steel. Hey, can I actually create additional materials now in 2009? Anybody going to answer that question? Yes or no? I go to Settings, Mechanical Settings. I come over here and I go to Pipe and Sizes, and now I can say New, and I can create a new material for pipe. So I could go in and I could call out whatever this is. Is this a soldered conduit? Is it screw type, compressed joint fittings, whatever it's going to be? I can create a material for it, and I can go through and I can add sizes to it. Now, am I going to use this to size things? Everybody say bye, Bernie. Bye, Bernie. I can actually, am I going to size conduit for fluids? No, I'm just putting it in there as a graphic representation. Why? Because I've got a coordinate around it. I'm working on hospitals. I need to see that conduit because I have a lot of congested rooms. We're not going to add the tables right here, but the idea is that I can say that this is this material, and it's going to be based on a library of pipe sizes, such as carbon steel. So I can go back and I can look at that library. Now, if you're really brave and you want to edit the pipe types XML, make sure you make a copy of it first. I had a couple of guys that called me up, mine's all messed up. Okay, I'm going to send you mine. All right? So we're going to go ahead and cancel out of this real quick. And now what I'm going to do is go back and look at how I want to define the conduit. And I want to just make a real simple change in here. I want to have a fitting that's a long radius fitting. And so to do this, I'm going to edit a family that's already in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to File, I'm going to go to Open, and I'm going to go take a look at my library of types here. So I'm going to go back up a notch here. I'm going to go to Revit MEP 2009, Imperial Library, Pipe, Fittings, and I'm going to go to Elbows. Now you can see I've cheated. I already have a conduit elbow in here. All I did was take a standard radiused elbow, and I created this family in here. And I made one very simple change to this. When I opened this up, I went over to the family types, and I looked at the parameters. And the only thing I had to do was change the radius of one of these fittings so that it actually is long enough to actually show me how that pipe is going to look. So that's how I would make the change. So a quick way to look at this is to go back over here to our plan view. I'm going to go to Views, Floor Plans, and the Reference Level View. And I'm going to look at what parameters are actually controlling this radius. Everybody see this? So I've got center spacing. That's one of the ones that it's actually using in here. So I go to Family Types. I scroll down here and I look for something that's controlling center radius. See anything in here? Center radius, time tangent, insulation thickness, all this stuff, the angle, the default, whatever the radius is. All I did was come in and change this value here from being a 1/4 inch to being 1 inch. Not 14 inches, 1 inch. Now, is this going to be exactly correct? No, you got to kind of play around with the numbers right here. And if you know what that equivalent radius is going to be in a standard piece of conduit, then you can go ahead and define that type. But the idea here is that I'm leveraging something that already exists. All right? Who pays taxes? Come on. All you guys don't pay taxes. Run. The IRS is coming. What do you not cheat on? Your taxes. Another thing you don't cheat on. Don't cheat on your wife. But can I cheat by taking something that's already in the program and reusing it? Absolutely. Just make a copy of it and edit the copy. Now, I'll give you another tip, too. Don't put it in the same folder as the stuff that comes with the program. Because what happens? I get new releases and stuff gets overwritten. All right, so now I'm going to cancel out of this one right here, and I'll go ahead and load that fitting in. So I'm going to just close this out and close this out. And now for this family, I'm going to load in my other one that's already finished in here. So I'm going to go to File, Load from Library, Load Family, go to Pipe, Fittings. I'm going to pick my conduit elbow that I already have done here. I'm going to go ahead and pick Open, and I'm going to have that one in my template. So now when I go to Conduit, I can come over here and go to Properties, and I can change that fitting to be the conduit elbow. There's a conduit elbow. I have standard and I have long radius. That's what I want it to be for a default. Everybody got that? Now once I have that done, I can come back over to my pipe menu, so I can go to Piping, and I come over here and I pick Pipe. I tell it what type of pipe I want to use. I want to use conduit. What size do I want? I want it to be 1 inch. What's the offset? Let's put this down at 4 feet right now, something really simple. I'm not going to slope it. I'm just going to simply draw in some pieces in here. And notice that as I'm drawing this along, I get a long radius fitting in here for that particular pipe. So it's something very simple. And as I go into my fine detail, I see that double line piece that shows me something similar to what the conduit should look like. This is a workaround. Okay? It's not the be-all and end-all of how to fix this problem, but it is a way that I can get a project out the door and actually show the physical representation of the object. I had another guy in my class yesterday that actually said he's doing this with ground ductwork. Yeah, he said, are you the one that was telling me that? Or?
It works better because the round duct, the contours are based on multiplier of diameter.
So the
elbow, you can just, within the type, you can just put in the multiplier.
So the actual duct elbows actually have better calculation methods than the pipe to actually get the right radius in. Cool, this man wins the first big prize. I told you I was going to give away a laptop. Don't be jealous. Congratulations. This is a laptop that will never crash. Everybody give him a round of applause. You have a 4-year-old? I wasn't going to throw that one at you. I'd hurt you if I'd done that. Hurt the person next to him. There's somebody sitting next to him. He's got an empty seat. Oh. Okay. All right, so that's one way we can have a workaround in there. And there's a couple of different ways that we can do this. I can have it loaded in the project. But I got one more piece I have to deal with. I have to have a connector. Because I need to create a relationship between the object that I'm connecting the conduit to and the conduit itself. So a real simple task is do the same thing we just talked about. I can actually go and load or open up the library where the other families are. I'm going to go to Explore, All Users, Application Data, Autodesk, Revit MEP 2009, and you know if I'm doing this 50,000 times a day, it gets fun sometimes. Oops, that's 2008, 2009. Go in the Imperial Library, and I can look at mechanical components, waterside components, general components. Let's see, my connectors should be under Pipe. Nope, under Connectors. I've changed my library so daggone many times, I've forgotten where this thing is. Oh, yeah, airside connectors. Thank you very much. I left my glasses, okay? I can't see anything today. So now if I wanted to take one of these connectors, you see how pipe connector, other, mechanical up here? What I want to do is I want to go in and just change that one. So I'm going to right-click on this, copy it, right-click and paste, and now I'm just going to rename it to be the conduit connector. All right? Now, once I have that open, yes, I want to rename that file. Now what I want to do is I want to just drag and drop it into my project so I've got it in there. And now I can go through and look at my families and I can edit that connector to have different values to it and different sizes to it so that it shows up correctly. Okay? Everybody got that? So I need a connector that I'm going to put on that side of a piece of equipment. How many people are actually breaking their projects up by discipline in MEP? So you have like a mechanical project, an electrical project. You know right now you can't read different data through a linked file, right? So this is how you get around it. You put in the VAV box, and instead of using the power parameters from the VAV box, you can actually just put a connector on it and put the power values to that. It's another workaround, simple way to do it. We've had a few people that are using shared files. They're actually setting up other groups and exporting groups out and doing it that way. But this is a simple way to do it. I just put the connector in. I don't have to worry about that. Okay, is that pretty cool? All right, everybody stand up. Stretch for a second. Turn around to your neighbor, say hello. Okay, here's the offering plate. Passing the offering plate down. Okay, sit back down. All going to church on Sunday. I don't like having people stretch in the middle of class because these are tight chairs, man. You got to sit down. All right. Anybody got any questions about what we've done so far with what we're putting in the template? Go to page 16 in your book real quick. I put a series of family tips down here. I'm going to steal your book for just a second. And I want to just kind of cruise over a couple of these things up here. A couple of real quick tips when you do this. And let's kind of get back into our PowerPoint. I'm going to jump ahead with this too. So we've gone past a few of these things. I'm terrible with PowerPoints, man. I've never been good at this stuff. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to go to the show. And we're going to go through this. And we got templates, we got systems, filters to control, pipe to create conduit, set and use connectors, create separate libraries for fittings, and now we're going to talk about families. Who's actually made some families in here? How hard is it? Compared to making a block? Compared to making a multi-view part in AutoCAD MEP? Show you, you're my MEP user, so I'll raise your hand. AutoCAD MEP. These are the people with the really cross-looking look on their face. The ones that customize it. Once you get it customized, it works great, but customizing leaves a little bit to be desired. It's a little bit of a pain. I know, I've been working on it since the first release. But with this particular case, families are a lot easier to create, but it's just some of the fundamental things, man. Don't work in one of the ones that's already in the project. Duplicate it. Make another one. Don't use that one that's already in the project. Another tip about making families, if you're making them, put them on the network. Don't keep them on your local drive. If you're worried about other people getting into them, lock the folder. Give people restricted rights to the folder. Only give people that you want to edit those files, give them permission. Next thing in here, edit the family paths through the setting menus and then copy the Revit INI file. How many people have tried this before? Who are my administrators in here that are actually setting up Revit? Anybody figure this part out? I configure one computer. Then I go into C, Program, Files, Revit MEP, and Program. I find the Revit INI file, and then all I have to do is make a copy of that on the server. After I install the software, I just copy it down, and I'm done. And you can automate that as well, too. So that is the simplest way. It's so much easier to set up Revit than AutoCAD. You don't have to deal with things like PC3s and CTBs and STBs and all that other mess. You just have the one file, the Revit INI file. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you said there. When you're creating the deployment image, I think there is when you're creating the deployment image, can you copy the file? I believe that you can. You can set the pathing in the deployment image as well too. You can do that if you already have the path up on your network. So the question is, can I do this when I create a deployment? How many people are actually using network managed copies? So when you do your network managed copy, that's one of the options is to set the pathing in there as well too. If you only have standalone licenses, use the copy of the Revit INI. That's a simple way to do it. And that's another way that as you make changes, I can go and make those changes pretty quickly. When you're importing DWGs, SATs, and DXFs to create your own families, how many people have tried this yet? We have a great little tutorial in our new book about customizing Revit MEP families that talks about bringing in pumps from somebody like Armstrong Pumps. So we brought their pump in, and when I tried to explode the thing, what do you get? Nothing. You get vapor. It's kind of like some future releases. Did I really say that? I'm sorry. But we don't want to explode those objects, but I can put connectors on those objects. And that's actually the easiest way to make a family is to go find something off the internet that's a 3D model, like an SAT file, a DXF, or a DWG. Just bring it in. Don't explode it. And then all you have to do is add the connectors. Now here's another little tip for you too. Don't use wall-based, ceiling-based, and floor-based family templates to create your families if you're using linked backgrounds. Hold that thought for just a minute. Okay, the question is, if I bring in one of these symbols off the internet, is it going to make the file bigger? Well, yeah. You're getting in a lot of geometry in there. The manufacturer is going to usually have a lot more detail in their model than we're typically used to using. So when am I going to do this? When I need to. I'm only going to bring in those families when I really need to have that specific part. By the way, how many times do you have to put in that part? Huh? Usually? So how many people are actually putting in that part? Not very often. Most of the time what you're doing is you're putting in a placeholder. Now if you're lazy like me and you don't want to work, you teach. What you do is you go and download as much of this stuff as possible, load it up into your library and give it to everybody and say, look what I did. No, you can do that, but yeah, it's going to load up your library and it's going to make the file size a little bit bigger. Again, I'm only going to do that when I need to have a lot of families. But coming back to this again, can I use ceiling-based templates, wall-based templates, and floor-based templates to make my parts? You can if I'm not working with a linked background. Does everybody understand the difference? You only use two types. Who's actually in a multidiscipline firm here? Raise your hand. You do both architecture and MEP. Architecture and MEP. And, all right, look. And structure. All right, who's using Inventor? Oh, come on, I got a client that uses Inventor too. Okay? Now, I got you on that one. All right, so if I'm having a linked background, really make it simple, man. You only need to use just a generic mechanical equipment template or a mechanical face-based. Then it can pick up any surface. It doesn't really matter. In fact, now when I put something that's face-based and it's hosted on a wall like a plumbing fixture, even through a linked file, if the wall moves, my face-based component will move with it along with the pipe. Unless I'm trying to drag over pipe, and then it will fail. Anybody ever had that problem before? Something moves, and where my pipe was here, I go across. That's when it will actually break on you, because you can't stretch across pipe and have it flip all the fittings over. It doesn't work. You have to erase and redraw. So I'm going to use face-based families as much as possible, or non-hosted. Now, when I'm making schematic symbols up, such as receptacles, and I just finished a project where I was doing this, where we had to put a bunch of pochets in the middle of a receptacle to show the difference between a switched and a non-switched, emergency switched, essential. So we were pocheting all these receptacle symbols. And what we wound up doing was I started trying to mess around with some of the model blocks for this stuff, and I realized, hey, this duplex annotation is the symbol that I really need to be using. It was the first time I messed around with it. So I got in and started making all these different copies of the duplex annotation and creating a whole bunch of families and subsets of those families off of that. So because I can only put a fill pattern in a duplex or in an annotation type family, I can't put a fill pattern on a model surface. We've had a few people that have had problems trying to do that. If anybody else has figured out how to do that, now's a good time to speak up, because I haven't figured it out yet. Anybody? Good, I actually found something that nobody else did. So yeah, you can use fill patterns in annotation families, and that's where you're actually going to use them. And they'll also adjust for scale. So if I need them to get bigger or smaller for scale, they'll do that. We already did this. We used Windows Explorer to drag and drop your families into the template for your project. So that was a pretty simple and neat little trick. Here's another one, turning on the automatic sketch dimensions for your family views for easier editing. I'm going to show you this one real quick. I always had a problem doing this with custom families. So I'm going to jump back over here to my recent files, and I'm going to look at my VAV box that I worked on for the last release here. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to look at the reference level view of my VAV box. I can go into visibility graphics, and I can take a look at some of the information that's in here. But when I'm actually trying to model in the view, sometimes I want these dimensions to show up. And by default, they're turned off. So if I want to have automatic sketch dimensions turned on, it actually makes modeling a lot easier. So as you're starting to create the solids, if you turn automatic sketch dimensions on, you'll have a dimension tool that you can actually use while you're creating the solids, and it makes it a whole lot easier to edit the model. This one came from Emmy McGann, one of our technical engineers up in Columbus, Ohio. She had been making like 50 parts, and she got really aggravated, and she called me up and said, I just figured this out. I'm like, great, I'm going to put it in the book. So it's a nice, neat little trick if you're going to make custom families, is to turn on those automatic sketch dimensions. Okay? So the question is, I have annotation symbols, and what I want to happen is not just for them to resize when you adjust for scale, but respace when they adjust for scale. I'm sure there's a way that you could probably put a parametric dimension on if you have like a gang of receptacles. I had a client that I was working with in AutoCAD MEP last week that actually doesn't just put individual receptacles. They put in gang boxes that show 2 or 3 switches at a time. So what you can do is if you actually have a combination, you actually make a family of a combination of those symbols, and then you put a parameter between those and have that adjust for scale as the symbol gets bigger. So there's a way to do that. You can actually use a parameter and put the gang symbols together. And that'll make it a little bit simpler for you. Does that answer that question? Pretty neat little trick? They actually were putting a jumper between it, and they had to have the jumper get bigger, and so that's why we wound up doing that, is we put a parameter to the jumper and to the fitting so they would all get bigger. Okay? All right, so those are first part of the family's templates, or tips. Let's get on to some other ones in here. We had so many family suggestions in here that we had to have 2 pages for them. Fill patterns can be added to annotation families if needed. We've already talked about that. Let's talk about shared parameters. Who's made shared parameters? How you like it? Easy? No. Can I have a parameter created with spaces in it that I can use in a formula now? Yes. In 2008, you couldn't. You couldn't have spaces in there. But in 2009, you can actually create a parameter with spaces in it. Well, I started working with one of my clients over in Raleigh, and they were rolling out Revit MEP. And they started asking me, how am I going to actually take care of all these multitudes of schedules that I have that I'm working with? So how do I actually deal with this? So let's do this. I'm going to end this show here real quick. And I'm going to come down here and I'm going to show you my file. I'm going to go to Explore, Revit MEP, and I'm going to go to this folder. I'm going to find a file called shared.txt. Now, I'm looking at this in native form under Notepad, but I want you to be kind of careful. Don't ever open this file this way, the way that I just did it. And don't edit this file, because you cannot generate that parameter GUID. You can't create that part. So you have to make these through the shared text parameters. But I did this just so we can kind of see how everything's going on in here. And what we did was is we started grouping things together by what they were. So I actually had these in groups. And you can have a ton of them. And we've actually added a bunch of these based on how they're used. So we have a pretty hefty library of shared parameters that we've made for schedules. So I'm going to jump back over here and go back to the project. Go back into Revit MEP. And I'm going to go to File and Shared Parameters. I'm going to pick OK, and I'm going to browse to that shared text file. Everybody see that? By the way, another piece of advice, put this up on your server. If you haven't done that now, go ahead and do it. Go ahead and do it as soon as you get back. So what I did was I went through and I created groups based on how I was going to use the scheduling data. And then I started off by identifying what the parameter is going to be used for and how the information is going to be assigned to a panel. Yes, sir? Actually, I've been using them in formulas. I hadn't had a problem in as long as you don't have a space in between them. Yeah, if you don't have to use the hyphen, I haven't had a problem using them because these are all text-based values. I'm not using them in formulas. Okay? But if you have a space, hyphen, space, that reads it as this minus that. Okay? So as long as you don't have a space in there, you should be fine. But in this particular case, these were all just text values. They weren't going to be used as formulas. So what we did was is we started organizing our shared text file by how the parameters are getting used. So we have all these different categories that we're working with. Fire protection, identity data, location, mechanical equipment. And all I did to do this was sit down and look at what they had in schedule tables. And then I spent about 3 or 4 hours going through here and making all these parameters and getting them all defined and set up. And the cool part about this is that it's really easy for somebody to follow. You don't have to really figure out. This will be on the AU website as well.
David.
So you'll have this shared text file as well.
May I comment about this? Correct me if I'm wrong, but the shared parameters, has to be, if you're working on a project with an architect, you have shared parameters across the project from an out-of-house client. You have to modify the text file to include their shared parameters. So everybody's sharing the same file, right?
Okay, so the question is, if the architect, okay.
That's the comment.
Comment is that, let me get the first part.
Shouldn't we, as an industry, identify our own shared parameters, perhaps by putting our company name in front of them?
Okay, the question is I've got the architect over here who has his parameters. I have my parameters. Should I use the company name as a shared text file? Anybody? Yeah, I would. Absolutely. I just call it out shared text. When you go to shared parameters, you're simply pointing to that file. Shared.txt is what comes with the program, but you can name it anything you want.
No, I'm talking about the parameters themselves. Because isn't this a problem with the industry where even the families created by the manufacturers, if they use the same parameter name, they get a different width. So the same parameter name has two unique widths.
Getting back to the question again, are we going to have duplication in here or different types of parameters? Yeah, you probably will. You will have some of that. And so, you got to be kind of careful how you're actually going to use the file and know what you're going into. This particular client right here is working with the same architect all the time. Okay, so they didn't have a whole lot of issues. It was actually pretty easy. So he didn't have to go through a lot of legwork to set it up. But getting back to the point again, the default shared text parameters that come with the tutorials don't have anywhere near enough information. So like I said, we're going to post this on the website for AU, and you'll be able to download this as a starting point. Back in the back here. Yeah. So the question is, do we know of an industry standard shared parameters file? Right now, no, I'm not aware of one. I would love to see one, but I haven't seen one that's set as an industry standard. For example, if you go grab Train's new air handling units from the Sacramento district, they have their own parameters that they use. And after I got this file created, I started looking at our stuff, and I was like, I might need to make some adjustments. And yeah, you will have a problem if the GUIDs are different. So you got to be kind of careful about that when you actually make the change.
Actually, Train, McQuay, and York are all using the same parameter files.
Okay, good. They're not the same? Fight! Oh. I haven't looked at those yet. All right, so we just heard something new in here. York, Quay, and Train, and who else? Those are the ones that you've seen. They have their shared parameters published. I'll check on that one. It's from Autodesk. I have to check on that one. Yeah.
My feedback at Autodesk.com. Supposedly you can send a message and they will send you back the common shared parameter file that they've been working on.
So the my feedback that's in beta then. Okay. That's why you haven't seen it published yet. The question is, or the comment is that my feedback, who's my feedback members in here? If you ever want to get signed up for my feedback, just go to myfeedback.autodesk.com and you can sign up to be a beta tester. Yeah, some of them you actually have to be invited to. Yeah, the comment is you have to be invited to get some of those files. That's cool. Yeah, it's good to know they're working on that. Okay, one last question. We're going to move on here. Let me get her. She was up here first. So the question is, if you're working in a multidiscipline firm with all three products, and do we recommend using the single shared parameters text file or multiple files? It doesn't really matter in either case, because I can always change what parameters I'm using when I create families just by simply changing the file location. Now, me personally, I would probably rather have them all in one file. That's just me. I don't like having too much redundancy out there. It's one of the reasons why I quit going to multiple templates. I have one template for Revit MEP, one template for AutoCAD MEP. Just as easy, from a CAD manager standpoint, it's easier to manage one file than several. All right, last one. I got to keep moving.
I'm actually from McQuay.
Yeah, okay. Stand up. This is David from McQuay. Everybody say hi, David. Hi, David. See, you're in AA. Okay, so David is working with Autodesk to create shared parameters. You're working with Train and everybody else too? You're working with Train and everybody else do the same parameters? Look at that. Oh, Train, that's a dirty word. Oh, I don't want to work with those guys. Now you understand our dilemma. Okay? Okay. All right, let's keep moving in here. All right, I'm going to come back over to my PowerPoint. And let's go back to the slideshow. This is called a user error. I tell you, I hate PowerPoint. I always forget how to get to that first page, so I'm just a doof. All right, so we're back to our families. Fill patterns, share parameters, easier. There's a couple ones. 2008 actually had clearance solids inside of Revit MEP for things like panels. Anybody ever notice that? If you worked with Revit MEP 2008, when you put a panel in, there was actually an object that was not visible on the screen. But when you actually opened the family up, it had a solid that represented the clearance area that I needed to have. Okay, so what you want to do is when you're creating that family, you want to create the solid, and then you want to create a subcategory and call it a clearance object. And then what I do to make my models look really pretty is I go in and I assign like a translucent glass material to it so that you can actually see through it when you go into a shaded mode. So that's one of the tips that I saw. One of our clients up in Michigan actually has made a ton of VAV boxes and panels, and they put all these clearance objects in there so when they run their interference detection, they can pick that up as an interference. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. So the question is, they tried to import it in Navisworks. How many people are using Navisworks right now? I've got the largest water treatment plant project built in the world right now going on with one of my clients up in New York, the Marshallese Water Project. It's 1.2 billion gallons a day. And they had the same problem. You know, how do I actually get this solid to show up? Because it didn't necessarily pick up the materials correctly. It showed up as this big box. That was a problem that hadn't been resolved. When you bring in that solid, it shows up as solid as a part of that object. And so, you know, I haven't really tried messing around with the colors and stuff like that to see if it's going to be different. But I'll ask one of my guys that's working on Navisworks right now, and I'll ask him if there's a way that we can make it translucent in Navisworks so you can see through it so that it's a soft interference instead of a hard one. All right. It'll be easy if it's a layer. One more quick question. We're going to keep moving.
To add on to that, a couple of years ago when we were still creating our own panel families and everything, we did something similar where we added our own solid box, and we found that at the end of the day it was easier to just do it in a drafting view and just sort of have the dotted line. So on plan you can see your clearance requirements, but in 3D nothing exists.
Right. So the comment here is that they were making the same thing and trying it out. That's why I created the subcategory of the object so I can turn its visibility on and off. I'll tell you what, hold those questions. Let me keep moving here. Okay. Go into repeat the comment again real quick.
You put that box and make it transparent.
You put the box in and make it transparent, and then you put the model lines on top of the vertices, and that's all you have to do.
Yeah, that's all I'm doing. And it shows up in 2D, and then you've got the
Okay, so the model lines will show up in 2D, but you also have the 3D solid. Everybody get that? This will be on the record. By the way, you're being taped today. Oh my gosh. This will be a podcast recording, so you can go back through this, and you can also download that from the AU website. Okay? Good tip. Good tip. I don't have another family for you yet. All right. Searching the internet for custom families. Okay, there's a ton of stuff up on the internet for families right now. And we're almost finished here. I want to get into routing, and then we're going to be done here shortly. This is what I found in my search, and this is in your book. Whoops, one too far. Go back to last viewed. Armstrong has a really decent library that you can get stuff off of from email. Bell & Gossen has a decent library of 3D parts. Carrier right now has 2D templates that you can use to make footprints. I believe Carrier is also working on some families as well, too. I'll add your stuff up here as well. We'll get this in the revised version of the document. Train has their new commercial DXF, 3D DXF models, but they also have the Sacramento office has actually made a bunch of Revit families. I don't know how they've done with their families. with the parameters. I have downloaded the families, but I haven't checked the parameters out yet. Lithonia, you can get IES data files for light families, so that's what I use Lithonia for. GE Lighting also has IES data files, and it has a web-based lighting calculation toolkit that you can use. Siemens, if you're getting into some more detailed parts like actuators and valve assemblies, they actually have a decent 3D library that you can pick from, as well as Rockwell Automation, and you can use eCADWorks to actually download and use a lot of that stuff as well too. So there's a bunch of stuff up on the web that you can actually look. Seek is a great aggregator. Did anybody go to the Smart BIM booth? That's somebody that you paid to get their stuff from. A few people say the content could be a little bit better, but that's a company that's actually full-time trying to write new content. So that's a paid service, but rather than paying somebody in your office to do it, you can pay this contractor to do it, and that might save you a little bit of time and money. We also do a little bit of it too, but not as much because that's not really our focus. We do it in part of an implementation. Okay? So there's a few of the things that you can actually get, sources that you can get information from families. Okay. So I want to get into tip section 4, routing. I'm going to get all these up here real quick. Okay, first thing, check your settings. When you're routing pipe and ductwork, how many people actually start the project by going into mechanical settings? How many times do you actually sit down with all the other disciplines and say, okay, in this interstitial place, I'm going to have my supply duct here, my return duct here, my lights go here? Everybody does that, raise your hand. Okay. You need to be doing that. You need to work that out. I actually saw a picture of somebody who did a mock-up of a hallway. They built a mock-up of a hallway to work out coordination before they ever even got the job built. I had another client that tells me that the first thing they do on the job is draw ductwork. Yeah. No, that's not the first thing you do on the job. First thing you do on the job is you get your equipment in, your primary piece of equipment, and then you add your connecting geometry. That's the way the process works inside of Revit MEP. But if you are going to do that stuff and you're going to route things first, you want to make sure that you check those settings first. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to jump back over to Revit again. I'm going to cancel out of this, close this, and I'm going to rip through this really quickly. So just kind of bear with me for a second. I'm going to open up this project. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw in a VAV box and some air terminals, and then I'm going to do some auto routing in here. Okay? Everybody with me? How fast do you think I can do this? No, I ain't that daggone quick. Sorry. Now, honestly, this is like any other thing that you use. When you're working with Revit, the more you use it, the quicker you get. Don't quit. Don't bail. If you run into a problem, stop, get help. But let's look at a real simple way that we can do this. I'm going to start off by going to my mechanical view, and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to drop some air terminals in here and a VAV box. So underneath mechanical, I'm going to go to air terminals. I've got my supply diffuser in here. I'm going to go ahead and drop this into the project, so I'm just going to place it right here. Now, the way I do this is I place one of them, and then I modify to get out of the command. I'll pick this, go to element properties. Now, this is a non-hosted component. What does that mean? It's not associated with anything other than the work plane, other than the first level. So if the level moves up and down, this will move up and down, but it's not associated with a surface or a wall. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drop that in there. Once I have that at the right elevation, I'm just going to simply copy it. So I'm going to go copy it once from here. I'm going to pick and do this one and just move it over a certain distance. 16 feet is fine. And I'm going to come back and pick both of them, copy them again, pick a point, come down, just say about another 14 feet, somewhere around in there. So I have those two pieces picked. Now I'm going to go add my VAV box. So I'm going to go to mechanical equipment, come over here, and I'm going to pick a size 3, 12-inch inlet, parallel fan-powered VAV. I'm going to drop this out in my hall. I'll use the space bar to rotate it around to where I want it. And I can also zoom in to look at it to make sure that I'm getting the right orientation with my symbols, how things should be laid out. So I'll go ahead and put that into place. So I got my VAV box in place. Pick that, element properties, set the height, 12 feet. Now this is where people mess up. They go in here and they start drawing duct right off the bat. And they don't check their settings. So what happens? I start getting all these weird layouts. Things going up and down and sideways and crooked. Revit is only as smart as the user. Everybody has that guy, right? It's usually your boss trying to do CAD. Okay, now I don't see it anymore. Why? My view range isn't tall enough in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my properties of my view. There's all that thing disappeared on me. So I'm going to come down here into the view range. See, this is the problem, man. It's going to a bulkhead level. I need to go to the second floor plenum or unlimited. I just need to make it higher, somewhere else higher in here so that I can actually see where that's located. Give myself a little bit more view. Now, to make this work right, I'm going to go to Settings, Mechanical Settings, and I'm going to check my main and branch settings. Well, first off, I'm using this particular duct type for supply air. I don't really use that much. I'll use like mitered elbows and T's, but I want to set my main to be the same height as my VAV box. Now, here's a little tip for you. How many people have actually edited VAV boxes? Made a few changes? I'll give you a piece of advice. Use the ones that are in here first and copy them, because every VAV box that comes in the program is center created. In other words, the inlet and outlet side is the center, and that's the elevation that it gets placed at. So if I place it at 12 feet, that's the center of my duct, the center of the connection, both sides. So now that I have that defined, I'm going to make sure that I'm following that same elevation that I just put that VAV box in, which is 12 feet. Once I get that defined, I'm going to come over here to branches, and I'm going to tell the branch to do the same thing. Be 12 feet. Come over here, and I'm going to tell it to use mitered elbows and taps now, and I want it to use flex duct when I lay it out. Everybody got that? Everybody pretty comfortable with this? Everybody done this, tried this out before? Pretty simple standard procedure. Okay, so now that I have that done, I'm going to go check one other thing in here. Let me go ahead and try to pan down in this view. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Click and hold my mouse. And I'm going to come over here. I'm going to put my mouse over this. And I'm going to actually pick it, tell it to create a supply air system. I'm going to edit the system, add to the system, bang, bang, bang. Get them all laid out. Pick my equipment. Come on, baby. And let's go ahead and finish this, or we're going to go to select equipment. VAV, pick that. Pick finish. All right. So I have my system defined. Now when I put my mouse over that, I get tab to see preliminary routing layouts. And for whatever reason, I'm not getting that piece to connect in the system. So let me see if I've got that right. Let's go back and check it. Pick this. I'm going to edit the system. Select the equipment. Pick it. Okay. Worked that time. Now let's tab it again. There we go. Now we're connected. What are those dashed lines for? It's a layout path, right? All right, so if I want to mess with the layouts, I'm going to pick this, and I'm going to go into the layout path tool. And this is where the tip comes into play. When I start looking at the different types of settings in here, and whether I'm doing network, perimeter, I'll get a few preliminary options in here. Okay, and when I get to the one I like, I can stick with it. But if I don't like it, I can go pick modify. And from the modify command, I can pick over a component to select it, and now I can start to drag it and rearrange it as I need to. This is a step that was kind of cut out of the books originally when they were publishing the Revit MEP books, is that I can actually use modify to make that change. Because we had a lot of people complaining about the auto layout tool. It wasn't really representative. It didn't really do what I needed it to do. So if I'm trying to duct around an interference and I don't want things to hit, this is a real simple way that I can just go make the adjustments that I need to get the routing layout that I want. Now, as soon as I do that, I go back to Solutions. It shows me the custom solution, and now I can pick Finish Layout, and it'll do the routing the way that I want it to. So it just gives you a little bit more control to go through here and say, I want to use this Modify tool to actually do my layout for me. And the people that I've had that have started doing this are having more success, not just with HVAC, that's pretty simple, but it really helps a lot with plumbing. If you're trying to do piping, this is a real quick way to make changes. Okay? Yeah, question? Okay, so you're using a cushion duct? Cushion head? Okay. I haven't tried. I'd have to actually look at it. You might have to use the intersections layout to actually do that kind of a drop type fitting in there.
I know we can do hard duct there.
Yeah. I don't think it works with auto layout that way, though. Okay, we're running out of time here real quick, so I want to wrap this thing up real fast. So give me about 1 minute. Don't leave yet. If you leave, you're in trouble. You're not going to get the computer. Okay, last couple of things to rotate to weird angles and to rotate things. If you've got a whole layout in a building that's at 15 degrees, lay everything out at 90 degrees, put it in a group, rotate the group. Drafting works better when you do it that way. If you have to redo duct again, split it, delete the intersection, and then pick both pieces and use auto routing solutions to lay it out. That will make it work much quicker. If items seem to get disconnected after you resize it, you can use something called nudge, where I pick a duct and I drag it from one side and then drag it back again, and that'll make everything appear reconnected. I think that's getting fixed in a service pack. Pretty sure that's actually getting worked on. The last thing, keep your layout simple. Auto routing works best with the simple layouts. Otherwise, manually route your pipe or your duct, either one. Both of those work. And the last couple of things on sharing, and we'll get you guys on out of here. When you're sharing your files with a consultant and you're the architect, make sure everybody saves the central all the work sets, then make a copy of your central file and send it to the consultant. Don't send them your main central file, because you're going to go into that central file and you're going to get rid of all of your sheets and seals and everything else. Take that out of that copied file. That way it keeps the file size smaller, and purge the file before you send it. Okay? Please purge it before you send it. It'll make it much smaller. Don't update it every day. Plan in advance. Have different benchmarks where you're going to update this stuff. It's not like AutoCAD where you can just copy a drawing file over. There's a bigger impact when you copy a Revit model over. So every time I get it, I'm going to run coordination review and interference check every time I get a model update, which is another reason why I don't want to try to do this every day. Better planning in advance will help you on a project. When you're trying to share items back with the architect again, go create a group of all your ceiling components and then pick on the group in the project browser, right-click on it, and export that group out. Save it as a separate file, and that way the architect can just bring back in your lights, your diffusers, instead of doing everything else, and it's much simpler to do. Create the group from a 3D view. It will work very well. Check the model geometry in the heating and cooling loads tool before you export to GBXML so I can see where different surfaces are and the different conditions of the analytical model. That's something that you can use to help check that before you send it to Trace or HAP or anything else. Communicate. Man, talk to your consultants on a regular basis. The more you guys communicate with each other, the better life is going to be. Okay? So one real quick thing in here. I want to move on to the next slide. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to go through this very quickly. Last thing. Enjoy AU. And everybody should have a very Merry Christmas. Thank you very much. Thanks for hanging out today. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a website or blog site?
Yeah, it's on. If you go to AU under my profile, you'll see it there. It's mep-cad.blogspot.com. All right. I'll be outside.